The hour of 5:02 having arrived, I would like to call to order the regular board meeting for the Vallecitos Water District. And let's start with the pledge. Mr. Sinella, Director Sinella.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Ann.
Director Ellisar?
Here.
Director Evans?
Here.
Director Martin?
Present.
Director Sinella?
Here.
Director Hernandez?
Here. Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Presentations.
All right, I'll jump in here. So tonight we want to recognize a professional accomplishment of one of our staff members. One thing we really try to stress here at Vallecitos is the importance of professional development. And that's what we're here to do. And that really helps the employee personally, professionally, and it really helps the district get ready for our workforce as we go forward and for our future staffing needs. And so those improvements could be as simple as a one-day seminar, or it could be a 4-year degree program. There's a wide range. So tonight we're going to be talking about Jason Hubbard. Jason's with us in the audience right there. So Jason joined the district back in July of 2014 as the Capital Facilities Senior Engineer. He's a graduate of SDSU with a degree in bachelor's in civil engineering. He spent most of his career working in the private sector, either as a consultant or in a construction firm, Hubbard Construction. You're familiar with it right here in San Marcos. Since he's joined Vallecitos, Jason's done a really good job developing both himself personally and professionally, as well as bringing his work group up and what they can accomplish, and that's great. And today we want to recognize one of Jason's personal accomplishments. So he's recently received a certificate for the certificate program at Cal State San Marcos for their water management and leadership program. So it's really important. He started the certificate program back in April of 2017, and he just completed it in August of this year. And they had a ceremony, a nice ceremony. I wasn't able to attend. I think it was a board meeting night, but there was a ceremony for that, which was great. So Jason, congratulations. Thank you for all your time and your effort. That's a big accomplishment. It really helps the district here. And I'm pretty sure Jason will apply everything he learned there to his day-to-day operations here at the district. So I'd like Jason to come forward, and I'd like to invite President Hernandez to come down and provide Jason with his certificate. And President Hernandez, it's right up there on the table.
Thank you very much. Well, Jason, I know I and the board are very proud and appreciate tremendously the fact that you attended this group. And congratulations. Put this to work. Save us more money.
Stay right there. All right. So organizational improvements at the district aren't limited to its people. So one of the things we like to look at, some of the other things we like to look at are our facilities, our processes, and our programs as well. And we're always looking for ways to improve those. So when this facility was originally constructed, the Water Operations Laboratory was included as part of the original design, and it was constructed, and it was to be used by the Water Operations Department. But as I understand it, it never received its certification. So it couldn't be used for official water quality samples as required by our regulations. So all of those required water quality tests had to be conducted through the Encina Wastewater Authority's laboratory. So that's been done from when this building opened up until now. And recently, the Water Operations Department looked at a cost-benefit analysis, and they looked at what it would take to upgrade our lab and get it certified so that we could do all of that work here, and we wouldn't have to be driving our samples to Encina, paying Encina to perform the tests, and waiting for results from them. So the goal was to become a state-certified facility, a laboratory facility. Through that analysis, it was determined that we think we could save a minimum of $20,000 to $25,000 per year by doing those tests in-house, and that's great. And again, it would avoid all those costs associated with Encina. No knock against Encina. They've done a good job for us. They've served us well. And until we can get our lab certified, that was the best option for us. So funds for these improvements were included in previous budgets. We had to purchase equipment, we had to make certain upgrades, and those have all been done. And then we had to develop sampling and testing protocols and procedures. Those have all been done. And then the laboratory had to be tested and inspected by the state's Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program. And that's also been done. So we passed all the tests and all the inspections, and we received a certificate of excellence for achieving 100% on all tests administered by that program. And on May 1st, the district did receive the certificate of excellence as well as the certificate of environmental accreditation for drinking water. So Sean Askin's with us here tonight. He's the water system supervisor. He's in charge of the lab, and he'll be accepting the presentation today. Sean began his career here, as I understand it, at Vallecitos as a laboratory tech at the Meadowlark Laboratory. So he has maintained his grade 3 water quality analyst cert with the American Water Works Association through the years, and he's allowed the district to really move forward with this project, and that's great. He's used his expertise and his accreditations and certifications for that, and he will be the official laboratory director for the district's water lab. So Sean, congratulations, thanks for all your efforts, and please come up and join President Hernandez.
Sean, thank you very much. We really appreciate you saving some money too. Here you are, sir. Ready to go?
Maybe one of you each hold it.
Okay. So this one is a little weak.
Jim, could I say something?
Yeah, by all means.
I would just like to congratulate you, Sean, and you as well, Ed, because I know this has been a long-term goal, and it's exciting to see it happen. Not only that you stuck with it all that time, but it will save us money, and I think it's a wonderful award to have. And then I want to compliment you, Jason, because you came on board not too long after I did, and I have been incredibly impressed with your growth and your confidence and control, and I don't know if you got the message, but I gave a lot of kudos to your last presentation here, sitting behind our new side thing, and it's amazing. Thank you for doing that, for putting in the effort to both of you, to all of you. I'm really proud of them.
President?
Yes.
Jason, real quick, I want everyone to know I apologize for wearing a hat. I never wear hats. I had a minor procedure yesterday, and it's really uglier than normal under there. So I wore a hat to protect you all from Halloween before Halloween. And great job, gentlemen, on what you did. I think we all congratulated you at once, but congratulations.
Very good. Thank you all. Presentation number next. Our city manager is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hold on a second while
Yeah.
I want you to know, Jack, you're the first person to use that podium over there.
I...
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Over there.
You should be out over there. Yeah, it's a new place.
Got a PowerPoint.
Yeah. There's a new one coming. You'll have to come back.
Hope it's not stuck up against.
So while Jack's bringing that up, the reason he's here is, as the district knows, as the board knows, the district has an agreement with the city of San Marcos about the use of South Lake. And I asked Jack to come in and update the board as to the status of the improvements that are spelled out in that agreement.
Just about done?
Just about done, yeah.
Yeah.
Just about done. So thank you very much, boards, for the time. I don't want to bore you with too much of the history, but it's been a long project, so it's probably worth spending a few seconds in the history. I have a bunch of slides that gets into the recent history and then where we're at going forward. But just sort of to set the stage, the city entered into an agreement with the district in 2005, so it's been around for a long time. The city had some very, very grandiose plans to develop the South Lake as a major recreational facility. It got caught up in the redevelopment elimination in the state, because that was how the city was funding most of the improvements. When the state took that away in 2010, that had a pretty big impact on where the city was going at that time with respect to the project. So there was sort of a retrenchment as that money was not going to come in anymore, and there was a lot of lawsuits about the use of the monies that we already had going forward that needed to be resolved. That sort of got resolved in the 2012-2013 timeframe. And about that time, the facility got lumped into a study of reclaimed water in the region. And so I was meeting with your former general manager back then, and was like, okay, let's just sit tight. We don't think this lake's going to have anything to do with that. We think it'll get eliminated from that pretty quickly, which is eventually what happened. But we sort of sat and waited while that process was going through as well. And in 2014 and in 2015, the district gracefully granted us an extension while we went to work on a new project. And that project, which I think I'll get into some of the slides at this point. Whoops, where are we? Where's the? Uh-oh. Is the number lock on? I was just going to try and use the arrows, but arrows don't work. There we go. We're good. Thank you. So we started working on an overlook type project rather than at the lake itself. And so we had a city-owned property above the lake. And so we were like, okay, if we're not going to be able to get down to the lake, let's at least not sit and do nothing. So we started working on an overlook project that would have its own parking area and some educational elements that would provide at least, if not use of the lake, view of the lake and some value to the lake itself. That project was funded through the city's capital improvement program, and we went through the design and permitting phase, and we've got all our permits for that project. And then as that was happening, the Brookfield project, that's Rancho Coronado, Rancho Tesoro is what it's now called, that came before the city, came in two different pieces, and then the second piece, which was commonly called the MU4 site, which is the property that's just north of the dam or east and north of the dam and the lake, was coming in, and we started to have conversations with Brookfield about whether we could work with them to get access to the lake area itself as part of reviewing their project. And so that, obviously, those things can take a while to get through, and so we did that. And when the MU4 site was approved by the city council, they were conditioned to build a parking lot, an access driveway and a parking lot at roughly the lake level. It's not at the exact elevation of the lake, but roughly the lake level, so that we would actually be able to get people to the lake as opposed to just up on the hill overlooking the lake. Brookfield's conditioned to do that. They're required to have that open and complete by the time they get to 30% of their project, the MU4 site, which is the 66th house. It's 200 and some, I can do the math, but it's not very far into the project where they're going to be required to have that completed. We think they're going to be grading out there but before the end of the calendar year for both the access road and the parking area. As lots of folks know, that project got caught up in some issues. There was a referendum that was circulated in town to try and undo the city council's approval of the project. Sort of had to wait and see how that was going to go. When that failed to get the required signatures and the council's approval then stood, then it was, okay, let's go full speed on what can we do now to actually get to the lake and make use of the lake as opposed to just this view of the lake. So the city staff tried to develop some plans to do that. We presented those to the city council and said, here, council, everybody's wanted to have, if not Discovery Lake, something like Discovery Lake with a fishing pier and a trail around it and a parking lot so that people can get to it. And so we started to work on those plans. We presented the concepts to the council earlier this summer. They were agreeable to it. They were very happy to not have to build another signalized intersection on Twin Oaks Valley Road. No one was looking forward to adding another signal on that stretch of the road. So the city council directed staff to move forward on the lake level improvements. So when the council adopted its budget and its capital improvement program, the project description was revised to reflect that. We have sufficient funding within the CIP to do it. We have just recently adopted our new Parks Master Plan. It also includes this concept for the park. So all of the sort of statutory, regulatory, legislative actions have occurred for the city to move forward on it. We think that once we get the final design off the Brookfield improvements and modify our environmental permits, because we're going to have to modify our permits for the trail that we want to do around the lake. That's probably somewhere in a 6-month period total, 3 probably months for the design and 3 months for the permitting process to go. So we're hoping that assuming that Brookfield is finished in the first quarter or so of next year with their stuff, we're ready to go in the summer and in the fall, bidding the project in the summer, and we'll be fully under construction in the fall of next year. We don't have any really pretty plans because we're kind of throwing this, putting this together in short term, but we do have some sort of concept plans. And so on this plan, the red indicates the trail around the lake. The blue rectangle towards the top is where the parking lot would be. So that would come off the new road that Brookfield will be building to get access to their development site. And then we would be able to connect that with a trail, with a path up to that red trail that would go completely around the lake. The green piece that juts out into the lake is a fishing dock that we propose to build. That would be connected via a concrete path to the trail. The trail right now is sort of an unimproved, you guys use it as a service road, and it's a little bit rougher of a dirt trail. So we would improve that to a decomposed granite trail, similar to the other trails that you see around the city. So that's sort of the extent of the project. There's a possibility in the future of looking around the parking lot for more amenities, but we're not really quite that far in the design yet. The area in the bottom blue corner is where the overlook park would be, so it just sort of gives you a sense of how far away from the lake that was, and it never provided access to the lake. It was very difficult to get down from there, so we think this plan actually gets back to the vision that everybody had way back in the day to get access to the lake. There's a little bit more detailed design on the parking lot that Brookfield will be building. And then lastly, this is a little bit of a blow up. It shows you how the fishing dock connects up to the trail and gets out into their lake sort of roughly at 4 o'clock from the dam. So that's where we're at. We're excited that we're able to get to the lake, because I think that's what everybody's always wanted to do, was get to the lake. We do have one issue that we would need you to think about in the future, is our last extension expires December 31st of this year. I'm not going to build what I just showed you by December 31st of this year. So we would ask that you consider an additional extension. We think 2 years is probably more than enough, but if we run into a permitting issue on the environmental side, or if we run into a construction issue, we have some wiggle room there. But that would be our request as you guys, in a future meeting, put something on your calendar to do that. But we just think that this fits with what the district and the city really envisioned back in 2005 when it did this agreement, to get access to the lake and make use of it. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Director Evans?
Yes. First of all, on the fishing dock, what size is that fishing dock?
It's longer than the one at Discovery Lake. I don't know that we've dialed in the exact width of it, but it's got a fairly long connection to the trail. And the idea is it would float with the lake level.
Okay.
So it would be designed, it would be anchored on the land end sort of in concrete, and then it would be able to move with the lake level.
Okay.
So I don't know that we've completely dialed in length and width yet, but it would be as significant as the Discovery Lake one, probably bigger than that.
Okay. And then you said you're putting in a parking lot, but you're putting no amenities? There's no bathrooms or
Well, we're looking at that,
washing?
we're looking at the option of a porta potty, or, permanent restroom is going to be tough there. So that's when I say we're looking at some other options right around the parking lot, to whether it's a play lot, a tot lot kind of a thing, or a portable restroom kind of thing. We're still fleshing some of those details out.
So-
But I think we've got some room and budgetarily to do that, but I think that there are some other issues we'll have to
And then,
address.
so, is this a fish and catch and release type of pond, or this is catch and there's not really a place for people to clean fish if they catch
There's
them?
not, I don't think it's ever been intended to be a take fish and eat fish kind of a
Okay,
place. I
okay.
wouldn't be surprised if that's happening.
But, okay, but it's supposed to be catch and release.
Because people are getting access to the lake.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Director
I
Martin?
got a few questions. First one is, the tenant, could you go back and show us the aerial view?
Sure. That one?
Thank you, yeah. I don't know how staff can do this, but Ed, could you point out where our pump station is? Sure. I think you have to come up here and do it here, and we won't be able to see it that well.
Oh, I thought we had screens
Oh,
out there as
no,
well.
No, this is the new system. This is the new system.
This is the pump station right here. So the dam base ends right
Oh, yeah.
here, pump station is there.
Right down below that,
Our
okay.
line runs right like that, goes up, follows the road.
And what's our egress right now?
left to the pump station, it's right here. It comes in right off of the new development.
To the dam,
They're
what is
building
it?
us a new road to the pump station and to
Okay.
that side of the dam. We come in right here where they're showing right now to get into
Okay.
South Lake
Okay,
and follow almost exactly this red line except for this part of the road.
okay,
There is a road here, it takes you down to
Right.
the shoreline, we call it.
yeah. Thank you, Ed, thank you. Did you think, I don't know, maybe you did you send staff a copy of what you were gonna do out there out of curiosity? I know you're
I've met
leasing it.
with Glenn and shared the presentation with him today, shared these rough sort of drawings yesterday, yeah.
Okay. Parking, if you go back to showing your parking, I'm just curious. It's not our park, it's yours.
Yep.
Where do people park when you fill up the, it looks like 22 spaces
That's about
that you
right.
have there?
Yep, that's about right.
Where are people gonna park?
I understand. If the slot's full,
That's gonna be full all the time.
the street is designed to have on-street parking.
The street around the lake?
Not around the lake, the main road off of the development
In
has,
Brookfield.
has area for on-street parking as well.
Now, you realize you don't know about the bathrooms, but there is no sewer out there right now.
We know there's no sewer
That
out
would be
there.
very
yes.
expensive. Water, that water, the only water that gets now, I understand, is runoff.
That's what we understand as well.
So you're gonna have to fill it, because it will drop down to nothing at some point in time, when a little more development takes place. You're gonna be in charge of the water filling it, not our job, right?
The lease agreement certainly says when it's a recreational facility that the city is responsible for those types of operational maintenance
Now,
activities.
you clarified that, I find that interesting. When it's a recreation facility, what does that mean? When is it not going to be a recreation facility?
Well, it's not a recreational facility yet.
But yet you're gonna be building out there now.
Yes.
Brookfield's starting to move out there, so you really should be taking over all the liabilities out there, wouldn't you say?
That's not how this has been viewed since 2005. It's been viewed since 2005 that once the city has a facility that's operating, that's when it takes on the responsibility.
So while it's being built, it's our responsibility.
While it's being built, I
Well,
don't
you
know. I
have
think
your
I'd have
sub-
we'd have to sit down and work through those details. I don't know if the agreement while it's
Has
being
our
built.
attorney had an opportunity to look over this lease?
No, Jim and I talked about that. I'm gonna be sitting down with him and going over the terms of the lease.
My understanding is it's not a hold harmless lease, and in my opinion, it needs to be complete for everything out there. Because if it weren't for the city gonna be building a lake, I'd be out for scrubbing it, period. It's an asset. But seeing as we're gonna leave it there, and lease it to the city, for a very good use, by the way, which I will enjoy as well as everyone else in the city, we need to be held harmless. This can't be part of our ratepayers' insurance money, or part of the liability that we have with our insurance carriers.
Yeah,
We
there's
won't be in control of it.
There certainly are provisions in the existing agreement that hold the city harmless. When you say
You
Hold
said
the
the
city,
city?
hold the water
I'm
district.
sorry, hold the district harmless.
Thank you.
When you say everything, I wouldn't sit up here and say that the district has no liability, but if it's related to recreational use and access, then we would be held harmless.
Okay, so our liability, the dam has a slight leak in it now. So our liability, if the dam were to have a bigger leak, we have to go repair it.
That's my understanding of the terms.
Why
of
would
the
we want to
existing-
do that? I'm just out of curiosity. Why would we want our ratepayers to pay for that? I
The
don't know.
repair of the dam?
Yeah, if it needs repairing, why would we?
Because if we don't repair it, the dam could fail.
Yeah, but we're not, our ratepayers aren't getting any active, we're not using it for anything, nor will we ever in the future. It's
Well,
just runoff.
that's-
I would caution the board not to have too
Yeah.
in-depth of a conversation. This is not an agendized item.
Yeah.
If you'd like to direct the general manager, I could bring it back as an
Perfect.
agendized item. We can have a discussion about
Yeah.
the terms of the contract. or
Thank you.
agreement.
Yeah, please do, please do. Okay, in that case, we'll bring it back for another discussion. I have no other questions.
Jack, would you go back to the red line trail? Sure. Because I wanted to, why didn't you follow the trail that's already out there in the area that you're not following?
It is generally following an existing
Right,
trail.
except for-
But except for that one spot. We wanted to get down closer to the lake because of the connection to the pier,
Oh,
to the dock
Okay.
rather. Yeah, that would be the elevation change, that the shoreline trail is quite a bit below that other one that you see
Hmm. Okay.
there.
you know, my passion for this is ongoing and.
I think we're getting closer to it with this plan.
Yeah, I'm gonna be here 8 years, 12 years, and God help us, I hope it's done before that. And so towards that end, my church, North Coast Church, has In-Service Day they've come out to San Marcos, and they've been all over the county, $17 million worth of work the last time they did this. I'm in the process of connecting up with them to talk to them about an opportunity. And I have since found out that there is a board of the Friends of San Marcos Parks and Rec. And I'm wondering if I could approach, when I got my eggs in a row, if I could approach that group to see if a volunteer program could be put together as soon as possible to go out and at least trim the trail, because then we'll have access from Brookfield. And if we trim the trail so that you got snaggletooths all over the place, at least the people that could walk around it would be not having to worry about dodging in and out of trees. And so I'm asking, would that be permissible?
Yeah, I mean, the Friends Group is, it's its own, an independent 501c3. The city certainly helped it get up on its feet, and they've been incredibly supportive of the city. They actually sponsor the Double Peak Challenge race, if anybody wants to run up the mountain in 2 Saturdays from now. But yeah, I think that would be a great opportunity for folks to reach out to them. I can send some contact information to you for the
Okay,
Friends.
I'm sorry, Hal, I didn't hear, I'm deaf in one ear.
So he's talking about the Friends of San Marcos,
No,
the
that-
501c3. You were talking about your church group.
Well, the church group I would come to the Friends with the opportunity for the church group to come and do a volunteer program out there.
I don't think you go to Friends. I think you go to that.
Well, either way, I mean.
Oh, well, I
we-
didn't know what the
parking-
vehicle was,
there's a
so that's why I'm
parking
asking if,
There's a
whether it's the
parking
city or the Friends, I don't know.
We'd be happy to have,
Yeah, okay,
Conversation
so
about it.
somebody.
sure.
When I get my act together,
Yeah.
I will move forward, so.
Sure.
And towards that end, it appears we do want to bring this to an agenda item at our next board meeting to see about an extension and what we want to do about the insurance and hold harmless and all that hocus pocus.
If that's the board's pleasure, I don't know if it would be at the next
Oh.
board meeting. I'd need some time to coordinate with general counsel, but we'll bring it forward well in advance of the December 31st
Perfect,
deadline.
perfect.
And Glenn and I have talked, if there's tweaks that need to be made to the agreement, we're
Very
perfectly
good.
happy to have this conversation.
Director
I
Sinell?
just wanted to say thank you, Jack, for giving us the update, and perhaps maybe in 6 months or so you can come back and
Sure.
even update us even further. I just want to say that I know this is kind of a high-level concept at this point, but I think this is going to be a great community benefit, and this recreational facility will be put to good use, and I think the community really wants it, so thank you for moving it forward.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes, Director Martin?
Jack, I want to thank you very much. I was involved in the original makeup of it, which was definitely the Nordstrom's of building. I certainly understand why you had to do some trimming there, but it'll be a fantastic opportunity for the people in the city, and I think it's going to be very well taken. Like I said, parking's going to be a problem. That's Brookfield's problem and your problem,
Yep,
not ours.
that will be our problem.
Yeah, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for continuing to work so hard to make it happen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
that.
Anybody else? Likewise, Jack, I too am happy that you're here. And I so desperately want to believe that this plan, in the next year will take place. And I'm only hesitant because we've heard this 4 times now.
Yes.
So bear with us at our next, when we have this before the board, we'll see how this goes.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything further?
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public comment. I do have one speaker, Mr. Hunsaker.
Mike Hunsaker, 115 Equestrian Court. When you do have some further discussion on South Lake, I remember Tom Scaglione giving a presentation here at one time about reclaimed water. And he noted that there was only really 2 sites that were viable for such actions. And the problem with reclaimed water is you either had a surplus when you didn't need it, or it wasn't there when you did need it, because you have to store the water when and during the rainy season, if and when it ever comes back. The 2 sites were South Lake and Lake San Marcos. And as you know, we have litigation going on with Lake San Marcos. And I think that should be discussed, because if we're doing this with South Lake and not making it appropriate for storing of reclaimed water, that should be factored into the discussion. On another subject, I attended the tour from the Water Academy of the San Diego County Water Authority treatment plant up in Twin Oaks. And many of the participants were rather surprised to learn that the quality reports that we receive every year include typically just a single unspecified day's reading on many of the factors of pollutants, particularly of concern is the total dissolved solids. And as you know, those vary considerably from season to season and even from day to day, depending on the mix of water. And the question was raised, and a valid one, well, shouldn't we be using an average value? Because one daily reading does not represent anything good about what's going on with water. Matter of fact, I think an average should be represented once a month as part of a regular routine. I also was mentioning about the water quality of the Colorado River. The river is, the Lake Mead is dropping, Lake Powell is dropping, and we're only about 3 or 4 feet above the limit before mandatory restrictions start going into place. California is not currently directly affected, but for the last 3 or 4 years, Arizona and Nevada in particular have been negotiating very aggressively.
Sorry, Mike, you're gonna have to wind it up.
Okay. And the question is, Sacramento is proposing to sell our water for money to give it to Arizona.
Thank you very much. Item next,
That's what that
Nope.
was gonna send out.
I'm sorry?
No,
Oh,
talking to myself.
I have here a notice to the public. An agenda,
Oh, it's just the consent calendar.
Just move, yeah,
okay,
consent.
consent item. Entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Action items, 2.1. I'm sorry?
1.3 now.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Ann.
You have a speaker slip for
Yes, I do. And
Financial reports?
so the question is, do I want to hear the speaker first, or let our presentation happen, might
It's
answer
out
some of
of
the
the
questions?
consent calendar.
Yeah, the speaker slip is on the consent calendar.
So bring up the speaker now. Bring up the speaker now.
I'm sorry?
Bring up the speaker now.
All right,
It
thank
was on
you.
the consent calendar, and we've already approved it,
Oh,
but
very
we
good.
can reconsider.
All right. Mr. Hunsinger, come up forward.
Just as a clarification, there's a presentation on a consent item.
No, just
No.
confusion
No?
up here, Mike.
Okay. Okay. The, this is on the financial reports, and we have a very frequent meter count, which is semi-informative, but there's a much more informative measure that needs to be handled. The current meter count sort of suggests that the meters really accurately portray the total usages of various components of consumption, but they do not. What we need is a pie chart showing the total consumption by type. This is particularly important because the number of meters seriously undercounts the multifamily consumption of water. You can have 10 or 20, in some cases, in some mobile home parks, 50 people working off of 1 meter. And if you have something that goes up that dramatically, just showing a number of meters really skews and mischaracterizes the actual consumption by use. On the investment report, I noticed that I didn't see the net return. I saw the gross income, but I didn't see what the investment company was charging for that. And the general saying is it's not important what you get, it's what you can keep. And I'd like to know whether or not the investment company is providing some of the benefits that was promised. The other question is, I noticed that over 40% of the investments are not rated, which is always a concern. Also, I'm pleased to see that most of the investments are short-term because the International Monetary Fund is predicting that in about 2020, there's going to be a major crunch on global municipal bond and borrowing. So that should be factored in. Thank you.
And Mike, I apologize, I put that in the wrong pile. I should have brought you up first. All right, now we can move on to 2.1. And I think we want the presentation first.
Yes.
I'm just trying to figure out if I could get this done from the staff table or not. I think I can.
Please, we spent a lot of money on that table.
I know.
We gotta use it.
Yeah.
Gotta use
See
it.
how this works.
Do you have someone here from Terra Verde?
Yes, I do. Actually, Kevin, would you like to come? Why don't you come sit next to me over here?
Yeah.
This is Kevin Ross from Terra Verde. So he'll be here and he'll be able to answer probably the majority of the questions, especially since he is the expert in the field. Thank you, President Hernandez, members of the board. So today we're going to be basically going through the presentation that the board and the committee has seen, but this is really an update and going on to the next steps. So everything here you've already seen, but it has been updated, so I'll kind of go through and kind of hit the highlights for you. In essence, we have the definitions, we have a feasibility study summary, which we went over with the board previously back in June, and again recently with the Engineering and Equipment Committee. We're going to talk about the benefits of the power purchase agreement, which is the primary vehicle in which we're proposing to move forward with any type of solar project. And then we're going to go over the findings. There's 3 main projects that we're looking at, and those are listed right there. Of course, the conclusions and the next steps, and talk a little bit about the schedule. So with that, there's a bunch of definitions, but I'm really going to concentrate on the main 3. The NEM, the net metering, is the typical project where you build some type of facility and it offsets the power that's consumed at that facility. The RESBIT, or RESBCT, is basically where you get to pool, a government agency gets to pool several meters and build a centralized facility. It doesn't give you as good of a one-to-one payback as a NEM project, but it allows you to centralize production and offset some of the costs of several different meters. And the last one I'm going to go over is the power purchase agreement, which is basically we're getting a third party that will build the project, fund it, operate, maintain it, and typically there's a contract in which the district is guaranteed a lower electricity rate for the term of the contract, and we'll go over those options. The rest of them I'm just going to put up here. If there's any questions, we can always go back to them. But those are the 3 that we're really going to talk about today. So with that, we're looking at, as far as the study itself, the district-wide energy consumption. And Terra Verde looked at every 15-minute data of basically almost all of our meters. So not only how much energy do we consume, how do we consume it? They determined the sites, they looked at the benefits, they did audits, the logistics and the infrastructure information. What would it take to actually build the facilities at those sites? And then they started sizing it and looking at the different types of options available to us. We even looked at energy storage, battery options, and we did cost analysis. Now, the battery options in general, and the board may remember from the previous presentation, and also I believe from the committee meeting itself, that they worked out to be less of a return on investment. Whether we did a purchase agreement, in other words, it'd just be a more costly project, or we actually did the project and funded it ourselves. So none of the presentations moving forward is going to really go into the battery analysis, because we've vetted that, or Terraverde vetted that, and it really became less of a cost benefit for the district at this moment. However, it's still an option to look at.
Quick question.
Yes.
Quick question, but the systems that we are looking at will be capable in 10 or 15 years from now, when they come up with better energy servicing batteries, will be capable to use that.
Yes. Solar projects that are being built today can easily be integrated with batteries at any point in their life.
Thank you, thank you.
And then they did a pro forma analysis, so basically a 20-year cash flow analysis to figure out what would be the benefit to the district. And then, of course, the report itself, which is actually not in progress. It's actually been finalized, and based on the results of today's board meeting, we could put a bow on it and figure out whether we're moving forward or not. Okay, with that, I thought I skipped that slide, sorry. We'll go to the benefits of the PPA. So the primary benefits of the PPA, and I'm not going to go through all this thing, is essentially for the district, you're getting a third party to front the money to build it, to actually build the project, to own and operate the project. And in the end, the district has a lower energy cost that's guaranteed with usually zero escalation for a period of usually 20 to 25 years. And the contracts could be kind of structured in different ways. Typically, as you can see from the fourth bullet down, there's buyout options on it. And of course, it says batteries could also be added to that, either up front or later on, which would just change the contract provisions. Let's talk about the first project, and this is the one that's from a cost-benefit analysis is probably the most beneficial, is our lift station 1. So we're looking at a power purchase agreement. And you can see the cash scenario and the power purchase scenario here highlighted, and looking at the 20-year savings. So you're looking at around roughly $650,000 if we front it with the cash scenario, and about a 12-year payback. But without spending any cash, you're looking at about $617,000. That's with no cash output from the district, based on the estimates. So looking at that, you're not supplying, and I don't know, Kevin, offhand, how much a 220 kilowatt system would cost. Do you have a roundabout number on that?
That would be about, I think we included in the feasibility study an estimate of just under $3 a watt. So that's going to be up around $1 million.
Okay, so it's $1 million savings up front, and then the net savings over 20 years. There is a difference, but it's not a sizable difference. So some here on this type of project, a PPA would definitely make sense. And you can see the net savings for the district is about $617,000 with the PPA. We looked at battery storage on this one. Again, that's another project that where you can see our net savings actually goes down with the battery storage to $500,000 from $650 or $157 with the PPA option. So again, this is where the cost and the technology of batteries, as they improve, those numbers will change, or as SCG&E changes the rules, those numbers can be reanalyzed. So with that, right now what the proposal is basically, you can see where the blue is kind of putting it at behind the pump station at the site. Now I know in the previous discussion with the board, we talked about what if something happened to that site. The PPA can be basically, or sorry, not the PPA, but if there's future development of that site there can be contract provisions to move the facilities onto the rooftops or onto some other place, or buy out the facilities. Obviously, it does affect the value of the site. Whether it affects the value up or down depends on the type of future use of that site. So there are options there, but there's something that the board does need to consider, that you are taking roughly 20 to 25% of that site up which is currently unutilized
Good
if
question.
this project moves forward.
Yes,
A
Director
quick
Martin?
question, why are you only using approximately a third of the site and not covering the entire site?
Sure, so the third of the site covers your 250 plus kilowatt hours, which is 90% of the total energy that's consumed on site. To produce more energy on site, you wouldn't get any additional credit. So this is not one of those pooling sites. You get the most bang for your buck when you basically offset the energy used on site. So putting more solar panels there, you don't really make more money, you're not getting more credit, you're just giving SCG&E energy for free.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so Twin Oaks site, this is the bigger project. This is where we're pulling in several different meters, and we're building roughly, I believe, a 2 kilowatts,
2 megawatts.
2 megawatts, sorry, 2 megawatts site. So you can see the 20-year projection is roughly $4 million. So that's a fairly large number, but of course, this is also a fairly expensive project. And this project here has great potential, because as you can see from the imagery here, we're basically covering the majority of the top of the tanks and leaving all the access panels and ways to get to the middle of the tank, obviously through. This would require, and within the PPA itself, would require upgrade of the electrical lines that go out to the Twin Oaks Valley to accommodate this. And that would be all handled through the power purchase agreement. So all the money that would be fronted, which would be in several $1 million at this point, or tens of millions, would be handled by the PPA, and there would be a long-term contract. For the district, for us, it'd be negotiating a cheaper energy rate, which would equate into roughly a $4 million savings over the 20-year lifespan. So we also look at floating solar at Mar Reservoir. And with the floating solar project in Mar Reservoir, we still have some options, but you're still looking at about a $739,000 savings. If we were to move forward on this job, there's a chance for expansion. There's also a chance to maybe bring a Livenham in as a partner in this project, because they get some benefit from shading the reservoir from the sun. So, and they're interested in conversation with maybe possibly looking at how they can partner with us. So if moving this project forward, we do the initial analysis, we'll work for Vallecitos to see, and then we'd bring in a Livenham to see what the additional benefit and cost would be, and to see if it would make sense. And with that project, we're looking at basically, those are the 3 projects that we're looking at, and each project has its own track. So if you look at it, you have some strong savings potentials with all 3 projects. Battery storage is really not the viable option today, but something we need to keep our eye on based on SCG&E rule changes and as technology advances in batteries. And then we could look at the sizing of Mar Reservoir, depending on that conversation. The sizing of the solar, floating solar at Mar Reservoir, depending on the conversation with Livenham, how that goes. So, as far as a presentation, we're looking at the next steps in consideration. Now, there are several off-ramps for the board to consider. The first off-ramp really is today. So we've done the study, and the study shows that we have 3 viable projects for the board to consider. Each project itself is a go or no-go for the next phase. Next phase of the project, really, if you look up at the presentation, is really the RFP process. So, in other words, if the action today is to approve 1, 2, or all 3 projects to move forward, the next phase for Terra Verde is to start that design process where they go out and they solicit solar developers to see what type of power purchase agreement we get. Each project then, depending on the best deal that we can get from going out there and advertising and kind of shopping the projects around, will be brought back to the board with the provisions of the contract. And Terra Verde would be doing a new pro forma based on the actual numbers to show us what the real savings would be, and we can compare it to the estimates. So whether it's the lift station project, the Twin Oaks project, or the Mar project, the next off-ramp moving forward from today is the board would have a chance to look at it prior to actually constructing or entering into an agreement. So that's an important distinction that I want to point out.
Director?
Okay, so by using the PPA method, our only investment is what we're going to be paying Terra Verde.
Yes.
Everything else is paid by the third party, which we choose or they choose. I was under the understanding when we got into this, is that we would pick someone to do this, and then we would pick who's going to do it to disallow any closeness with friends and relatives.
Yes, the district's choosing it. Terra Verde is, they're excluded from being a developer, so they're not allowed to develop any of these projects. They're purely our representative to advise us whether this is a good deal or to help negotiate the contracts, because we don't have that expertise in-house. But at the end of the day, the district staff is going to bring the proposals to the board to make the final decision on, and final recommendations and decisions on each project. So each project will have its own track with a power purchase contract for the board to consider, including the background and.
So they're not, they are the project managers when it's being built, or you are, because you're expensive.
Actually, I'm
You're
primarily.
too expensive.
I'm actually primarily overhead. Jason's expensive. So,
Yeah, whoever, what, I
And
guess what I'm
Anthony-
asking is, does Terra Verde do this work, or are we gonna have all of our staff doing this? Which, in all fairness, we have the best staff, we have a platinum staff, they're wonderful. This ain't their forte, they're water guys, and I don't wanna pay to make them electric, solar guys.
Absolutely. So on page 51 of your staff report, you kind of see that breakdown. You can see that Terra Verde has a $212,000 contract, and the study itself is about $60,000, and we're through that portion. The next portion is $97,000 for the 3 designs, essentially. Okay.
For Terra Verde.
For Terra Verde. The staff time spent to date is about $10,000. So there will be staff time, but Terra Verde is the project manager of the job. However, when it comes down to actually building on our sites, staff is going to get involved because it's accessing the site, safety of the site. We still own and control the site. But we're not going to be, especially with a PPA process, we're not going to be looking over shoulders and construction managing the site and inspecting, because they own it. So if they take shortcuts, there's a performance provision within the PPA. If they don't perform or their stuff is down because they took shortcuts, the district is held harmless on that.
So do you have an estimate of our investment in these 3 projects? We know Terra Verde's, that's by contract.
Yeah.
We don't know yours.
Yeah, so as we get each project identified and the scope centralized, staff will be bringing that forward. So let me just give you an example. If we move forward with the Lift Station 1 project, the board will be looking at a package that has, here's the power purchase agreement, the best deal that we can get, and here's the financials, including staff time. So you'll see that whole package, so you can see what the savings is, what our investment as far as upfront from our labor costs are. In this case, there's no material costs. And then, of course, the portion of the investment or the fee from Terra Verde. So you can see this project rolled up, and Terra Verde will be looking at that and putting that into their numbers, including our staff time, to figure out what our payback or what our true savings is.
So moving forward tonight on 1, 2, or 3 projects is just to get us to the next step,
Yep.
to look at what our true costs are going to be, including overhead, which is a big component. That's the next step. So it's really to give another contract with them for, you said the amount,
Exactly, so it's
200?
$97,000. to move forward.
97,000 to move forward.
So
Gotcha.
James mentioned that there's several off-ramps. One is tonight. The next one would be after we come back to see if you really want to move forward and enter into a power purchase agreement. So there's,
And what, how much are we in for it right now?
We spent about 10,000 in staff time, about 60,000 on Terra Verde time. So they haven't billed me all of it for yet, but I'm sure now that I mentioned it, I'll get a bill soon.
I'm a little confused because we're talking about Terra Verde doing design and then doing a design build with a developer. So straighten me out there.
So this is it's an RFP process. I don't, on purpose there in the presentation, I don't call it a design. They're basically laying out the guidelines for the facility and the expectations.
The criteria.
The criteria. and then
Specifications.
The specifications. And then there's a developer, which is basically doing a design build
Okay,
as part of
thank
the
you.
PPA project.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sometimes
That-
we
that
refer to
clarified
it
it for me.
as a 20 or a 30% design package. It includes all of the performance specifications for the project. It includes, the location of where the the array is to be built, information about its interconnection, information about its performance requirements. It includes sample template contracts that are obviously to the advantage of the district. All of that is a fairly substantial amount of information that would be included in the RFP package.
Perfect. That clarified it to me. Yes, Director Evans.
Did you need to finish a clarification?
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
Oh, okay, I was just going to ask in this, the design quote at 97,725, is that if we were to go forward with all three projects? Or, is that, would be if we did all three projects or just one?
Yes, it is. So the way we outlined the scope of the project was to move forward up to 3 projects was the assumption, and the type of projects were assumed in their proposal. This fits exactly what their proposal was. So I don't see any variance or changes between what was scoped
Okay.
and what we're moving forward.
So Kevin, then you, in the next step, Terra Verde would be giving us the specifications for each of the particular situations in a much closer ballpark to what the cost would be. And then once we've agreed on that, then the design builder now knows what we are expecting them to design and build, and they're not telling us what they're going to build, we're telling them what we want them to build from what you've recommended. Is that how it works?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we're gonna work with staff very closely to create the RFP package. And that's as I mentioned before, it's a number of documents, including detailed specifications for the equipment and for how the scope of the work is to be performed, how it's to be interconnected to the grid. All of these details will be included. It'll also have in it sample or template contracts that the proposers that are going to be involved in that RFP process will have to either agree to or provide, their red lines or whatnot to. We will then work with staff. Once those bids or proposals come back in from the process, we will help qualify them. We'll basically evaluate all of those, throw out any that don't meet the criteria of the RFP instructions, and then potentially go through even a short list interview process if we have a number of developers that may be relatively close in terms of their proposals and their scopes.
Okay, and then how long are you anticipating before that will come back to us, if we were to give it?
That's my next slide.
Before we go
Okay.
to the next slide, I guess my question is, with the Mar Reservoir discussion, I mean, that seems a little premature to move into the phase with the other two if we in fact still don't know whether we have a partner in Mar Reservoir.
Absolutely, Director Hernandez. Well, the plan for staff is Mar Reservoir is going to lag behind the others too, because we need to do some preliminary work on Mar, and then we need to meet with Livenhain. And from there, we give a board update if Mar becomes a Vallecitos only project or becomes a joint project. That would have to be brought back to the board with an update of how that financials would work also.
The question I have then is, if we decide not to do the Mar project, does that reduce Terra Verde's contract on the other two?
Potentially, it depends on, we need to do a certain amount of upfront work on Mar.
Right.
Obviously, if we decide not to do it, there'd be some scope savings.
Okay, very
That's
good.
true.
Yes, Director.
If we were doing a PPA, what's the benefit of us partnering with a Liebenheim? It costs us nothing. They're gonna install it. We're gonna get the benefit. My understanding is we're losing money on that already, no matter how you wanna put it, is we're not getting back as much of what it costs us to produce. That sounds better. Well, what's the benefit of going with Liebenheim? That with either case,
Yeah, so real simple, it's, we're only covering a little bit of Mar. There's more room to cover Mar, but if we partner with Livenheim and make it a joint project, they could use their meters with the PPA and they can see a savings, and we put a bigger facility, and when we put a bigger facility in Mar, you get the cost benefit of putting a larger facility. That's really it.
but with the PPA, there is no cost benefit.
Sure there is. You're gonna get they're gonna be able to build a larger facility, which means you could get a better dollar or cent per kilowatt in the agreement than a smaller facility. So the cost benefit is a greater savings.
In that regards, is that partly what your design is going to show us? You're going to do the preliminaries, you'll talk to Liebenhain, and then you would come and show us the options of doing it on our own and
Yeah,
doing with a
staff fully
Liebenhain?
intends to bring any Liebenhain option back, or at least reporting back that Liebenhain is not interested, and we're moving forward with just a project for us. Because we don't have enough electrical credits to cover all of MAR and get a larger PPA, without making Twin Oaks smaller. Because Twin Oaks is large, and that's taking the majority of our bill credits, or using our meters.
Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm a little bit confused. So would MAR also be a RESBIT project?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so how would that work with, I don't know if you can do that with two agencies. Is that?
Well, there's basically two avenues that the district could pursue. One would be to form a formal JPA for the purpose of sharing in the benefit with them. The tariff allows, it was recently updated about 2 years ago, to allow that capability, the building of a JPA specifically for the sharing of bill credit benefits.
I see.
So theoretically, if that was done, Liebenhain could include their portfolio of meters, and they could select from whatever meters they have, SDG&E meters that they have, that they would like to see benefited by the bill credits that come from that project, just as Vallecitos would do as well.
I see. Thanks.
Before that, so I don't forget, just Director Martin brought up a continuing discussion. It's my understanding that we are not losing money at Meadowlark. Do I remember that wrong? Are we, I thought it was a break even.
So the way the agreement is structured, it's supposed to recover the costs from the sale of recycled water to a Liebenhain and to Carlsbad. It would cover the tertiary, the highest level of treatment. All the secondary costs that's being done at Meadowlark is on our dime. It's on Vallecitos, and its customers pay for that. But when you elevate it to tertiary water, the recycled water, that's the agreement is supposed to cover that. So if we were to do something to reduce our energy costs to produce that third level of treatment, then Carlsbad and Liebenhain would see the benefit without having invested anything to get those.
Right.
To get that reduction, so.
So the.
And we are in the process of revising that agreement. We're meeting internally now, and then we'll be meeting with Carlsbad and Liebenhain to talk about a restructured recycled water sales agreement.
And if we did in fact come together with Liebenhain and or Carlsbad to increase the solar array, then it would benefit all of us.
Depending how
Lower
we
our
structure
cost
the agreement.
as well theirs.
Right.
Yeah, the current structure agreement will only benefit them.
Right,
But if we restructure our agreement, it could benefit Vallecitos.
perfect, thank you. Director Martin.
And General Manager, I appreciate how good you really are, but you didn't really answer Jim's question when he asked, are we losing money there? Is it costing us more to produce than we thought? Doesn't matter if it's a half a penny, I don't care.
Yeah.
But just, the point is,
So I don't know how to answer, I don't know the numbers right now. We're in the process of this internal group. We're putting the numbers together. We have a meeting set up, I think it's next week. We're gonna have the revised numbers to go over what the actual costs are. And then we can give the board a better look as to what are we actually getting, what is it costing us? Is there a delta between the cost of production and the revenue from sales?
and then part of Terra Verde, when it comes to the McMorrow Reservoir, you're gonna bring us back, if we approve that tonight, you're gonna bring us back showing us doing it alone versus what our benefit is to bring in a partner in a PPA.
Yeah, and
What our actual dollar
Yeah,
savings would be.
whatever that arrangement looks like.
Right, yeah, whatever that
Exactly.
is.
We'll take guidance from staff as to what that arrangement would look like.
Sure.
And then we'll take it and plug it into our model for the financials.
Thank you for being on board. You've done a fabulous job so far, and I know it will continue, as has our staff, of course.
with that, the last.
Oh, wait a second, I have a question from Director Sinella.
I could wait till the end too, I guess, but.
Okay,
Yeah, I would just wait.
very
So
good.
The last bullet kind of shows you the off-ramp, so that present the RFP results to the board. Now, that intends each project individually. So there'll be an off-ramp and evaluation for each project individually to say go, no go. So that's at the end of that design or RFP process. Now we have selected from a recommended PPA contract. The board will have a new evaluation based on actual numbers to look at, with staff time and overhead included, and then it could be a no-go or no-go decision for each project separately from them. So, lastly, project schedule. So, obviously, we've completed the study. We're here today in September for staff recommendation. This went both to the board originally in June, actually. It went to the engineering committee just back in, where is it? Lost it on the page there. July, August, I think? No.
Yeah.
It went to the committee, and then, so basically what we're looking at coming back here in September for today's board meeting for action from the board. Both staff and committee recommend moving forward with all three projects. If we were to move forward, we're looking at, you can see the RFP design phase kind of laid out in the timeline. So basically starting right about now, September to November, creating the RFP docs and moving all the way into about March 2019. So at that point, we'd be starting to bring projects back to the board for approval on the no-go decisions on each project individually. And based on them all moving forward around the same time, you're looking about a year to full development and operational permits by March 2020. So with that, I'll attempt to answer any questions, and I got Kevin here to answer all of them.
Yes.
Yeah, so a couple things. In general, I like the idea of going solar. I think there's a lot of good reasons to do it, and I think that there seems to be some ROI there for us. But we are getting to the point now as we evaluate this that there is some, for this particular project, some budget creep. I mean, we're in it for about 60,000 now. We're looking at tonight, depending on how this goes, taking another 90,000 or so. So now we're talking about some pretty big numbers. And as we go through this, I think we should have a discussion, a pretty deep one tonight. Yeah, the more we invest in the studying of this, the more, or I would say the less inclined I'm going to be to not no-go, right? Because I'm going to feel a little bit committed after we start crossing, $250,000, and I suspect there's going to be a third round of this, right? So I still think that I'm comfortable with it, but I want to make sure that the board has, a good discussion around that. And the second thing is, I'm trying to visualize these individual solar projects. I'm not so concerned about the one off of San Marcos Boulevard because it's kind of hidden behind there by itself and it's kind of already in a light industrial area. But have we consulted at all with the neighbors? There's a lot of housing that kind of overlooks the tanks in Twin Oaks, and all of a sudden, they're used to seeing kind of a mowed field, if you will, kind of open space, and now all of a sudden, I'm kind of visualizing the solar plants like in Gene, right? Is it going to be this like,
So you're absolutely correct. We'll have to do some outreach on that project. The good news is if you look at the Twin Oaks treatment plant, all their tanks and their huge mixing box where they mix all the potable water, which is, I forgot what the size of that is, quite large. They're basically covered in solar panels already. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but the neighbors are actually used to it. The orientation would be exactly the same, and the way the solar panels would face, it would be towards the west, southwest, which luckily for us, there's a hillside there with no homes. So as far as the facing of the panels, so the majority of the homes would see a side view or see the back view of the panels because they'll be looking at it this way with the panels tilted opposite from their view shed. That I'm getting that from actually CWA when they put the panels in and they did their outreach. That's exactly what they told the community, and that's exactly what they built. Our panels will be orientated exactly the same as theirs.
Okay, and then same with the MAR, the floating solar panels in MAR. There are houses that are like right over the lake, and again, they're used to seeing a lake, right? So, and I've never seen a floating solar system, so what's that look like?
They're basically floating docks, and the panels are still tilted, and they're being tilted to the
Oh,
west.
so they're actually, okay, so I was visualizing like some sort of like, just like floating, like glass balls or something, or mirror balls, or something like that.
That'd be really cool.
It's actually, yeah, so it's more, so basically, we're gonna cover the lake with
They're
with
just-
docks?
yeah,
It's a pontoon system.
It's pontoon system, yeah.
okay.
And they kind of float up and down, and there'd have to be some design element, because it gets quite low, it has a potential to get quite low. Those are the things that we have to vet, and when we vet them, something like MAR, for example, and that's why I anticipate MAR lagging, may not work out as well because of the additional cost and complexity of building it. The residents themselves, there'd be some benefit to them, because one of the benefits of covering and shading Mar Reservoir is the reduction of algae. And when the algae blooms, because it's a nutrient-rich water being recycled water, and there's die-off for algae, there's potential for odors. So we would definitely engage the community that way, but I don't make any promises that there will be community members would be all on board. I think we'll have mixed results. Those are the type of things that we'd have to evaluate moving forward through design and before we go into construction.
But after we spend $150,000.
Yeah, right now it takes staff time. If there's no will from the board to move forward, there's no real need to start really evaluating.
Okay, thank you.
Director Martin?
Interesting question, but I always thought, and I don't know this, but I thought that the panels we're using are absorbing versus the ones in Gene, which are reflective.
They are all absorbing, but there's still potential for reflection because they have that glass top.
Okay.
So,
Well, with that, what I really want to do is I really want to thank our committee, and especially Jim Hernandez, for, ever since I've been on the board, he's been harping on this, and only 6 years later, sure enough, it's in front of us now.
Short 6 years.
But we have a new GM, and he's made it happen in 2 years. So, but I really want to thank
Rocket sled.
the committee, both people on the committee, but especially Jim for being the barking dog and getting this to us with what looks like could be a substantial savings.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
I like the project.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make a motion so we continue the conversation, but I'm going to make a motion that we approve 1, 2, and 3 to the next step and spend the, how many $1,000?
$97,725.
For an investment that seems to be well worthwhile, unlike some investments we've made.
Plus staff time.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. Thank you.
I'd be happy to second that motion, but I
And
do have a question.
discussion, yes.
Question. And then I'm just wondering, what exactly it would be the detriment to us if we deferred the MAR project at this time? We looked into the other two, because they seem to be a lot more certain in the amount of money we'll save, and then pick that up later. I understand we're doing double duty with it, because we're working on the algae as well, but is there anything that staff or Terra Verde sees that's a plus or minus in deferring the one to just a little bit
So
later?
There's no detriment per se, because basically it'd be a reduction of scope, so staff would just be looking at Terra Verde to separate out the scopes of the 3 projects, so we have an understanding of where that 97,000 would go, so then we just wouldn't be spending, because it's a reduction of scope, that portion. There's a potential savings detriment of $739,000, but that's over a 20-year period, and that's if everything works out. So you can't put that in the bank because it's not a project with a real number that we're moving forward with. So there's no real detriment to saying no on a project. What we're looking at is the investment of time and some expenditure to see potential savings, and that's where we are today.
And
Okay, thank you. I was going to say, it's a few thousand, and the whole thing, it's several thousand, but it seems to me doing all 3 and finding out where we're really at this time is logical, so
right, and
don't amend them, not wanting to amend.
before we do have the vote, I heard you say that one of the next steps is to start talking with Olivenhain and/or Carlsbad to find out quickly before we spend a lot of that potential portion of the contract on McMar to then bring back and say, hey, this is not working, or bring back and say it is working, so that we can continue.
Yes, there will be some upfront work that we need to, so this way we can actually have an intelligent conversation with
Yes.
them and we know what we're talking about. but we won't be spending the whole design effort before talking with them.
Very good. Yes,
If I could just
more
add one
discussion.
thing, not discussion, just a cautionary note, that, I don't know, how many of these programs have you designed for Terra Verde? Or how many of these have you done?
Are you referring specifically to floating solar or to all of these solar
All of
projects?
the projects.
I was probably well over 500
Okay.
individual
So
sites.
you're really an expert in the field.
Oh, yeah.
I love our staff, they're great, but again, you're water professionals. I would just like to see, as much as they can do, they do. They're professionals at it. I think we found out the difference with the locker rooms. I hate to go back to that, but we found the difference there. So I really bow to the professionals that they've done this they know what they're doing.
And that's why we have a contract with them.
Yeah.
There's no
Awesome.
intent in this. that
You
staff
picked
is-
wisely, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
We followed your lead, sir.
Very good. We have a motion and a second, not a resolution, so all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Very good. I do have a speaker. Thank you very much, Mike. Don't ever hesitate to slap me around so I don't forget you. Very good.
Over the last couple of years, I've seen quite a few different agencies consider solar. And I've gotten presentations that say solar doesn't work, solar is great, solar with batteries is great, and solar with batteries is not so great. And it's bad enough buying solar for your own home, but this package is even more convoluted and complex than most. But it will pay off in my estimation. And that is because, according to SDG&E, 80% of the cost of power is in distribution, it's not in production. So as a consequence, the greatest savings are when you can use the power on site. Now, two agencies that I'm dealing with that do use batteries is the San Diego County Water Authority, that is treatment plant, and the Pomona Palomar Community College. They use battery systems. Palomar notes that it helps them knock down the power costs during the peak hours, which is about 4 hours in duration. And there's going to be a question of whether or not they're going to shift the time of use again. And then there's a question of CCAs, which will probably dramatically increase the off-peak and even the nighttime rates dramatically. In which case, the battery option becomes much more important. Now, the other one for the Twin Oaks, San Diego County Water Authority, they have a 4-hour battery system. And after 4 hours, since they have to operate 24 hours a day, they kick in the diesels. And if we start getting rid of those with CCAs and such, and SDG&E is in there, the value of batteries goes up dramatically. I would urge you to put the option of the batteries in at a later date, and almost a moment's notice would be extremely important. And I expect that will be the case, especially when you go with the CCAs, because we're probably going to have to import power from other states in order to make up the difference that the solar power cannot provide for over 12 hours a day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Reports, 3.1, General Manager.
We have another action item, 2.2, sorry.
2.2.
Oh, heavenly days, look at that, I'm trying to kill us here. Sorry. 2.2.
So this is another solar project, but it's the one on the district site.
Right, I'm sorry.
And a recent certificate winner.
All right, good evening, President Hernandez and board members. Yeah, continuing with the solar theme, I guess, tonight. So I'm here tonight to talk about the change order request for the solar inverter replacement project. So just so the board knows, back in 2006, the district installed a 360 kW solar panel system on the carports. That project was built for $2.8 million, and I believe we had a $1.1 million grant to build that project. That project converts the DC energy, I should say that project has a inverter that converts the DC current to AC current that we use. Those inverters are no longer functioning. They haven't been functioning for a couple of years. So this project is to replace those inverters. Before the inverters failed, we were saving about $70,000 to $100,000 a year annually. So this project was to replace those inverters and also get a new data acquisition system with a kiosk in the lobby, and also do some cleaning and replacement of the panels. So the board approved a contract this last June for Baker Electric for $154,000. That contract was executed, and then Baker contacted the manufacturer to order those central inverters. And then at that time, the manufacturer informed them that those inverters, which they had, and actually worked with us to give us a quote, so we know they had them, but they then informed Baker that components within the inverters were no longer working. They canceled the order, and those inverters are no longer available. So Baker did reach out to other manufacturers to find an alternate supplier. Turns out that the manufacturer for central inverters, they really start their systems at 500 kW, and we're below that. We're at 360. And those manufacturers were not willing to modify their equipment to work within our operating window. So the central inverters were no longer an option for us. So we talked to Baker, asked them to provide options, where could we go from here, and they started looking at string inverters. So so central inverters will take the entire solar panel system and convert it to AC, where string inverters will break the system into groups. Therefore, if certain panels are covered by shade or are broken, you're still getting the benefit from all the other groups that aren't on those other groups. So currently now, string inverters are the most cost-efficient inverters in the market. Now that market is evolving very rapidly and very quick, so I can't say where it's going to go, but right now today, string inverters are our best option. So they did put together two options for us. They're on page 52 of your board packet, and that is the Kakuna string inverters and the Chent string inverters. So there are pros and cons to each of these manufacturers. Clearly, the Kakuna inverters are more cost efficient. They're for an additional $34,000 to their existing contract. They are more efficient because they break the system into 9 groups, where the Chent is 18 groups. However, they are a new product line, so there is no real strong track record for this product. The Chent inverters are clearly more expensive. They're less efficient, but they do have a strong track record. So we did internally meet, reviewed that, and did decide that certainly a more cost-efficient option is the direction to go with the existing asset we have to get that back up and running and get that power savings that we want to realize. We did look at some other options as far as abandoning the asset or starting from scratch. We didn't really flesh those out too much, as again, it was we were looking at cost. So the $34,313,000 that we're looking at as a change order, that's above staff's ability to authorize. So Ordinance 146 requires board approval for any change orders greater than 10%. So that's why I'm here today. If you look at page 53 of your board packet, that's the fiscal impact. So you do see that we budgeted $295,000. We do have $1,000 for Baker. We've estimated a 10% change order. We have staff and overhead at 16.5. That money has actually already been spent to date. And then we do have a placeholder of 35,000 for panel replacement and cleaning, and that will be done by a third party, not by Baker Electric. So at the time that we awarded it in June, we were looking at spending $221,000. With this $34,000 change order and some additional staff time that we figured in, we're looking at $267,000. That's still below our estimate of $295. So we do still see a surplus. Not looking for a budget adjustment at this time. We'll evaluate that at the end of the job when we actually have real dollars spent. But based on that, we're still looking at a payback of 2 to 3 years based on that $70,000 to $100,000 saving. We did meet with the Engineering and Equipment Committee meeting 2 weeks ago, review these options, discuss the issues, and so staff and the committee do recommend the board approve a change order to Baker Electric in the amount of $34,313, subject to the provisions of the contract, and I can answer any questions you have.
Director Evans.
Well, I'd like to thank the committee for reviewing it, and I'd like to move for approval. I think this is a good thing. I just wanted to clarify the difference between the string and how they did it before. Is that like the old Christmas lights that if one bulb went out, they all went out? And the new series is if one goes out, it goes out, but the rest keep working? So if a panel is broken, it doesn't put the whole system down?
It just takes that particular string.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, right. But I think it's a great idea.
Director Martin.
So my question is, typical change order, there's always someone else's fault. But when Baker got the bid and was filling it out, and they called the manufacturer said, yeah, we got it. And then when they called back to say, we got the job, they said, oh, but it doesn't work. Is that what you're telling us? I mean, the businesses really do that?
As frustrating as that sounds, that is exactly correct. We actually worked with the manufacturer in design, talked to them, said, hey, this is a system that had a broken piece. We want to replace that broken piece. They said, we have it. Here's a quote, $75,000. Okay, great. Let's move forward. Let's hire somebody to install them. Baker calls them up. We're ready to order it. Okay, now we got to go out to our warehouse, open up the boxes, and fire it up. They have a process where they have to, certify that it's working before they send it to you. And they just, I guess they just don't do that process until you actually place that order.
Well, I don't see as we have much choice. At least you did tell me something I didn't know before, was what our savings was on those solar panels. And you said it's between 80 and 100,000?
About 70 to 100, I think that's conservative. I think we actually are going to save more than that. I'm trying to be conservative in those numbers.
A month?
No, a year.
A year.
100 to
130 a year? Because I know there's something in the works I'm trying to get hold of, but, so it saves 130,000 a year. So ROA okay. And let me ask, why do we have more staff time? Did you have to pick up the phone 2 more times?
Costs money every time I pick up that phone, Director Martin.
Well, yeah, but you got 12 grand. What happened? What?
So that 16.5.
What created a job difference of $12,000?
Yeah, that 16.5 we've already spent, so I've just kind of budgeted that number. Hopefully we'll spend less than that, but there is going to be time to still get submittals and process RFIs, change orders, those things. We don't really know what can happen on the job, so we kind of have a length of time, and we just budget a number in there to help manage the job.
It is what it is.
Also, it's really $4,000 staff time, and you got the overhead costs, it's staff and overhead.
Aye, that overhead.
Thank you, committee, for doing a good job again. I know you've researched this.
Yes, Director.
I don't think the motion was seconded,
No,
so
that-
I'll second it.
Very good. So there's a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Very good. Now we'll move on to 3.1, manager's report.
All right, I just have a couple. So first, the board may remember that we hired a new auditing firm. It's Davis Farr LLP. And they're going to be starting the audit for this year, and they'll be here on Monday for what they call their field work, which is when they come in and actually start delving through the records, gathering and evaluating the data, and they'll probably be here for 3 or 4 days. So most of next week, we'll have the auditors on site. And the last thing I wanted to mention was the boardroom improvements. we're making progress. So similar to the item you just heard, we're having trouble getting some of the components delivered. So the contractor was supposed to have things, and one of the biggest things is called the voting station. That's the thing that has the new microphone, the ability to push to talk, all of that. It's apparently still in the docks in China, hasn't gotten its way across the ocean yet. So it's holding up completion of the project. But you can see we have the lights installed, still working on making sure they're powered correctly. We have the 2 monitors installed. The sound system is working better. These aren't the permanent mics still, but it's working better than it was the last meeting. So we're making progress. We think we'll be done in mid-October. That's our updated schedule for completion of all the improvements.
A question that came up this morning at the Capital Campaign Committee. The tariffs that are being imposed on China and others, is that going to affect the cost of our panels ultimately, and certainly the products that we're presently waiting for?
I don't know if it'll affect the ones we're currently waiting for, but the projects going forward most certainly will.
All right, thank you. All right, that was the manager's report. I think it's
And we're getting those inverters just in time for all these lights.
yeah, really. We're going to talk about that later.
Yeah.
The legal counsel.
Just one item. Last time I had reported on the Senate Bill 998, which the legislature did pass. We're still following that. It's still sitting on the governor's desk. That's the Water Shutoff Act, which if it went into effect, would affect the district's billing and disconnection standards, which would have to be altered and dealt with by 2020. So it has not been signed.
I had heard just recently that there is a new bill that passed through the legislature that as of January 1st, all apartments have to have their own meters. Are you aware of that?
Well, I think all meters have to have a sub-meter. Yeah, but it's not,
Oh, a sub-meter.
right, so all residential units, whether they're single-family home or multifamily, have meters.
Yes.
But I think the new legislation is that they all shall have sub-meters.
So-
And that's gonna be the responsibility of the apartment manager, the
Okay.
developer, not of the
But
agency.
it's not a full meter.
No, it's
Ah,
not,
okay,
it's not
then
a
I-
district-installed
The
meter.
property
Yeah.
owner would own the meters, the
Right.
sub-meters.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, well, that clarifies that. All right. Water Authority.
Well, our meeting isn't until Thursday, but I just thought this was just an interesting little point I wanted to make about, we had talked last time that they'd had the presentation about checking the pipes and relining the pipes and everything. So we've just gotten notice of completion for Pipeline 3 relining from Lake Murray to the Sweetwater Reservoir. And I just thought it was interesting because it says nearly 5 miles of the Water Authority's 66 and 69-inch diameter Pipeline 3, the pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe from Lake Murray to Sweetwater required rehabilitation using the steel liners. The project brings the total relining of existing pre-stressed concrete to 55% complete, so that means we still have a long ways to go. The final construction contract price, including our change orders, was $27,994,659. I can't even grasp sometimes what we've spent. But it was a decrease of 2% from the original contract value, so they were very excited. And the pipeline returned to service. It was shut down off and on the last 2 years. It returned to service on June 4th, 2018. And then I'm very excited and proud to say I received a call today, and I've been appointed to the Water Authority's Audit Committee.
Nope.
So I'm
Congratulations.
excited about that.
Thank you very much. The Encino Wastewater Authority, capital improvements, we had our meeting this morning, and the odor control assessment. We have 3 areas out there that they're looking at. They've been studying it for the past 6 weeks. Happy to tell you that we are containing 98.5% of the odors, and we were doing very good until the process interruption a couple of 2 or 3 months ago, and then, boy, we just lost it. And the neighbors across the freeway, who the project was built during, after we had the sewer plant in place, so everyone knew it, but over these last 20 years, they've changed ownerships, and I can't believe, although maybe there's a legal clause in there to identify, oh, by the way, there's a sewer plant across the freeway. So these neighbors are far more active. They're getting together and they've got notices and they're listening. And interestingly enough, there's people out there who actually sniff the study. It's like wine tasting. They're actually in little booths sniffing bags of stuff to tell you how intense it is and what products are in there.
Wow.
Everyone was amazed. And they're taking applications in case anybody's looking. The cogeneration building, holy mackerel. There's a wall on that building that has been deteriorating away, and they've got rebar that's exposed, and when they were opening up to look for it, I mean, they were clawing with, picks and just easy, whoosh. And so there's some work that needs to be done there. Fortunately, it's a non-bearing wall, so they're gonna patch that up, and I'll let you know what that's all about. And lastly, the computer maintenance management program, we have a new system in place, more data, more information, better efficiency, saving us money, and it went online the 1st of September. And our next meeting will be October 17th. Policy and Finance?
We had no meeting in September. Our next meeting is October 9th.
Very good. And standing committees? Engineering, you heard from us.
Finance
Financing?
reported out at the last meeting.
Very good. Anything else from anybody else? Directors' reports on travel? Either way?
I was
Dr.
at
Snella?
Kowloon.
Yeah. Ladies first?
Oh, sure, why not? I've
I
already-
was at Kowloon yesterday morning, and I thought it was a very interesting presentation on the ground replenishment system and how well the communities and people are beginning to change their thinking about the products. So I took many of the bottles home to test.
I attended the same meeting. It was an interesting presentation. One question, I thought was a really good question she couldn't answer was how are they positioned to deal with direct potable reuse in the future? And I'm curious to learn what they're doing about that. So.
Very good. I also attended it, and I drank the water, and I was quite happy to see that they've had a water test, and nobody could tell which water was which, except Director Martin.
No, that's not true.
I know.
I also attended the meeting, and I've been down to Pure Water, ours here at the Santa County Water Authorities, and I've tasted the water, and I know it can be done. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem is when they start saying that we've cured the yuck factor. No, you haven't. People have just changed their habits. They're buying bottled water. I mean, that's a fact. Go to any store and see it. But I think it's fantastic, and I think when San Diego gets to go ahead, I can't wait to see it happen. I'm a big believer not in direct, but in indirect. And as long as the next step, they don't change it, because they changed it already from the big reservoir to Miramar. The next thing, they're gonna change it to a bathtub in someone's backyard, because it's closer and cheaper. I think if they get over that in their mind and do what they said they were gonna do, it's a little more expensive, but it's water. It's necessary and needed, and I think, the old 1950s slogan, "The solution to pollution is dilution," doesn't work anymore, because you can't dilute it as much as they used to say you could dilute it. But great presentation by them, and they do a superior job up there, and they have since the 60s. So they've been around doing that for a long time, the ground replenishment. So, excellent presentation, I thought.
Yeah, I attended the same thing, and I don't have anything new to add that wasn't already said.
Very good. Item 4.1, the Aqua Conference is in the fall, so look forward to that. Director's comment, future agenda items? Yes.
Yeah, I just had a question or maybe an observation on the Aqua Fall Conference in San Diego. Could we possibly look at maybe some kind of carpooling effort to do that? It's really hard to go down there for multiple days and deal with parking and driving every day and,
Absolutely.
yeah.
We can do that.
Very good. 5.1, director's comments, future agenda items?
Just to mention, you do have CSDA coming up.
Yes,
on Monday.
next week.
Yeah, so that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think carpooling is a great idea to come up with a way of doing that. Just have to remember, we all have to go at the same time and leave at the same time.
Yeah, that's the
So,
only trick.
and if you're late, you miss the boat.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to get home earlier, it's not gonna happen. So that's part of the problem with the carpool is different things have different, so, but I like the idea of it. Either that or you can give us all those passes, fast track passes, so we can do what Jim does.
Yeah, I got approval this time to charge it.
This time? Really, from the water district?
No, from the general manager.
Oh, so if we get those, we can charge the district
Amen,
for it?
sister.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I just learned today.
I didn't get an
I
email.
think it was
on that.
yesterday.
I didn't get an
There was
email
no
on
email, I just
that.
sent it.
No, I'm just saying that.
Thank
I
you,
didn't
Director
quite know.
Hernandez.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you, General Manager Broom, I appreciate it.
This is a non-agendized item, we can't discuss it.
Yeah,
put it on the agenda next
no
time.
discussion, but we know it's
We'll have to have
there.
a private conversation with Director Hernandez.
Whoops,
The issue that was raised is are tolls part of the commuting expense?
Sure,
If there's a
should be.
legitimate conference that directors are going to and they get reimbursed for mileage and per diem and time, and they take the fast track to go, as, you know, to pay a toll, is that a legitimate expense? And my answer to him was yes, I think it's a legitimate expense.
Jim will always rat you out, you know that.
I
He
didn't
always
mean to
does.
rat him out, I just,
Lessons learned.
sorry, but I didn't want to keep it a secret, 'cause
I know.
all right, and then we are going to bring back the South Lake in the next meeting or two
Yeah.
to discuss that in full.
Probably mid-October, probably the second
Yeah,
meeting in
I was
October.
quite polite tonight,
Yes, yes, you were.
yes, holding my tongue. Anyway, with that, item 6.1, motion to adjourn.
Go for it.
So moved, favor, all in favor? Aye, done? Go home.
Aye.